that's it. We'll wait till my computer sees us. All right, cool. So we are going live. Let's all make a little tweet real quick, and then we'll start the episode.
Okay.
Queuing it up.
And make sure to mute my YouTube. All right, well, good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. I am MaggieBot, and you are hanging out to listen to us chat about games. And I brought two friends today. I brought Matt Morgan. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, or where to find you, and what you like to games.
Well, as far as finding me, I'm doing a little bit of writing for dailyworkerplacement.com, so you can find me there occasionally, about 1 or 2 posts a month. As far as playing games, really about anything, but mostly Euro games, and I'm a little bit into X-Wing miniatures as a more competitive hobby.
All right, and we also have Netters with us. Netters, tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
Hi, everyone. I just went ahead and I'm on YouTube and I'm on Instagram and such as Netters Plays. And I play a lot of board games, I guess. I picked up the hobby not so long ago, actually. I picked it up maybe like a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I'm fairly new, but I think I got like a whole bunch of new games in a fairly short amount of time. So hopefully I'll up my experience and knowledge of them.
That's a beautiful shelf for a year and a half.
Yeah, thanks. I've been
You
working
really do. You have really good taste in games. Well, that's what I'll say about what I've seen from you.
Thanks. Yeah, I like to think so. I really don't like too many party games and such, and the social like deduction and such. So I've really taken like into Eurogaming and just figuring out all the math components and everything of it. I like that.
I like to think of social gaming and the like hobby niche Euro games as kind of separate. Like Munchkin is not necessarily the same thing as what I do when I play games, so I kind of have separated them in my mind a little bit.
Yeah, they have a separate purpose and serve a different audience.
Right.
And you walk away having done kind of a different thing, right? Like you're not using the same parts of your brain or personality to play a Euro game as you do a social deduction game or whatever else.
Yeah, inevitably something like this always devolves into one of those conversations of what is the definition of a game, and like
they're all games.
People spend 2 hours trying to slice that, and the only thing we can ever agree on is that there's probably 3 definitions, and different games fall into different buckets, but they're all games. Just have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I consider it all games. You're all gamers. I don't care what you play. I know that I don't have the same sort of experience when I play a social game than when I play Euro. So this morning I got on Twitter because we're doing a Saturday hangout instead of Sunday. Sorry for the switch 'em up, but tomorrow I have a massive game swap. I am probably going to go and maybe get a copy of Imperial, so I'm super jazzed about tomorrow. And I'm going to get rid of maybe 30 or 40 games from my collection and hopefully bring home some other games. I was on a podcast recently called On Board Games, which I'm sure is more famous than me, so like their audience is bananas, but we were talking about replayability in games and how replayability works and what you gain out of it and what types of games were good with replaying and what ones didn't really hold up that well. And because it's a podcast and it was kind of a short segment, we didn't really get to talk as much about it as I wanted to, so I thought that would make a nice hangout discussion. So first I'll ask both of you, like really quickly, do you like replaying games and do you get a chance to replay a lot of games? Netters?
You can go
Yeah,
first, Netters.
I do. I replay a lot of games. I play a lot with Mitch, so we tend to play a lot of 2-player games. And we also started the 10 by 10 challenge too for this year. And if you're not aware of what the 10 by 10 challenge is, it's basically where you pick 10 games at the start of the year and you kind of commit to playing each one of those games 10 times. And so we kind of just challenged ourselves so that way we can get like some older games that we don't usually bring about to the table and just force ourselves to kind of replay them. So yeah, I think we hit a lot of replaying games because of that challenge. So we like to play a lot of the similar games, so it kind of helps in that too.
Yeah, that I can imagine. What about you, Matt?
I definitely long for more opportunities to replay the same games over and over again. It's something I feel like I could just never accomplish. There's a certain set of games I do play a lot. I mean, there's games you consider your gateway games, but that's the time where I'm showing people for the first time over and over and over again. It just happens to be a different group of people every time. What I really want would be to have the same gaming group play the same game a couple times,
Oh no, that's just the
over a long
dream.
span of time. This is fantasy talk here. We want that test of skill and to actually feel like we're learning about the game, we're getting better at it each time we play. But it just hasn't really clicked in yet. I used to review a lot. I used to do a review a week, and I kept that up for a couple years, and I just totally burnt out on it. It's like too many new games. I want to play all of these games over again, not just a couple times, just to get the review out. But
What I love about what happens when you replay or you play so many new games or you're only ever teaching games as repeats is every once in a while when you do get to like fall back into a replay of a game like a Terra Mystica or something, it's just so cozy and familiar. Like no one has to look at the rule book. No one has to like even question a single rule. You just play right through the game. It's such a pleasure now. And I think that's only possible by playing a stupid amount of new games.
yeah, to have everyone know the rules before you even sit down, we're just amping up the fantasy land here, but might as well go for it. I mean, it's not like it's this unachievable, impossible thing. You just got to work at it.
Yeah.
Well, and reviewing definitely takes that to a different level. And all three of us are kind of in content at this point, and you always have to be playing the new thing and be able to speak on the new things. But you also have to be perceived somewhat as good at games, which I think you get better at games the more you replay them and analyze them. So I think there's a weird balance because people play a game with me and I'm not that particularly great at games. Like my great game group is better than me, and it always strikes people as weird that I don't just crush in everything.
Yeah, I actually got to play Russian Railroads this last Monday. I found a Euro gaming league, and it was really nice. Like, it's not a game group that I kind of joined and we played small little games. It's like I posted it on the meetup saying, "Oh, I'm going to bring Russian Railroads," and this one girl, she reached out to me and said, "Oh, I want to play that one." And so when I arrived, I already had people that knew the game that were interested in that game, and I finally got to play a four-player game of it. And it completely changed the game with only two players because I've only played it with two. And so when I played it with four, it kind of showed me where I'm at in that game, if I was actually playing it well or not, because these people already knew how to play it. So it kind of gauged like where I stand with that game. And that's why I
Yeah,
kind of playing it with new people that actually knew what they were doing.
I mean, that's a very interesting wrinkle in of itself. The fact that you may have played the same game a couple times with the same player count every time,
Hmm.
and going off that same routine. I mean, it might as well be a new game. For some games.
Right. Yeah.
And
So
Russian Railroads especially is one that you can literally gauge how, like, if you're doing well in that game because the average points that people are gaining per round, you can very much see their progression. There's no hiding who's winning in that game.
right. Yeah. Well, I actually was winning throughout the whole game, and I was like maybe 20 or 30 points ahead of everyone. And then at the very end, like one player just sort of kept on climbing up in points every single round to the point where he just like surpassed me at the last round.
So do you feel like you learned something there, and now you have this burning desire to play Russian Railroads again?
No, we actually got to talk about it a little bit afterwards, and he said he tried this one theory he had supposedly about like just upping the tracks and the amount of tracks on the first road, and he wanted to try it out for a long time, and he saw it work for other players, and he finally got to try it out, and it worked for him. And he says if it's some way like if there's some way to break it, like he hasn't found a way to break it yet, and he wanted to experiment with it. So I
Is that
think I
something?
Like, I want to play him again just so I could try that and see if it works for me too.
Is that something you find you do often? I mean, I ask this to both of you, like to break down a game and just kind of chat about it after you're done playing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love talking about a game like after I play it, just kind of to figure out like what other people were thinking, what their strategies were, or what they didn't like about it, or what they can do better next time too.
I fall into a middle ground there. If I allowed it, like in my life, my group would literally sit there for 3 hours for a 2 hour game and talk about they start metagaming it. They start trying to perceive the best strategies and stuff and talk about it in a theoretical sense. As soon as it gets to theoretical, I'm no longer having fun because I'd much rather that theoretical, this is probably the best, to be a play of the game. If it's just talking
Yeah.
about the actual happenings that happened in our game and how well they did and how we could have changed them, or maybe a couple of like particular moves that weren't correct, I am I love talking about that part. But as soon as we start, trying to guess and trying to like almost ruin my next play of the game, I'm not happy.
Right.
Yeah, I'm never sure how much delving into, what I did on turn two gets into like, tell me about your character moments in RPG play, and what point am I putting all the other people at the table to sleep? But it's definitely something that would come out more with the repeated play group. If everyone at the table is capable of holding down that discussion, it's probably an extra rewarding feature to having a lot of replayability.
Right.
That being said, do you both? So, Nutters, I know a little bit about your gaming habits, but you have a couple meetups that you attend. Do you have a regular group of the same people that sit at a table and play games?
Not necessarily. Actually, recently I've been meeting a lot more people through like Twitter and Instagram and meeting up with them. And this last Monday, I went to the Euro Gaming League, and I think I've actually found my like my home, to say the least, because it's a lot of people that like the same type of game. So I'm going to revisit that place, and it's every Monday night, and it lasted till like midnight. And when I left, people were still there. So I usually stay up late, anyways, playing games at my home. So I think I'm going to just revisit that location and meet the people that are there again, and kind of hopefully form a group that meets weekly there. But usually not. Usually I'm just meeting up with people here and there at different locations, which is fine.
And you, Matt, you mentioned having like a lot of teaching games, but do you have like a solid like 4-person group?
I have several, but they're all very sporadic in my ability to get to them or arrange them myself. There's a usual Wednesday night gaming group that I try to make it to, but I miss it more often than not. And then I'm just very fortunate to have a lot of friends of friends and mutual friends with my spouse. I mean, they all like to play board games. They're not what you consider, hobbyist types of people who would buy games and read rules themselves. But when they come over, they're like, "Well, show us the next game, please." And just
Yeah,
a couple conventions across the year. I hit the same conventions every year, so see the same people, just not on a weekly basis.
I can understand that. I personally have, a small amount of people I see a lot, but we very rarely replay in the same configuration. So my partner is a gamer, so we play with other people, but we don't always like play in the same because there's usually about 8 people at the our weekly, and so you get like a very different group depending on who's playing what. And some games, you like playing better with some types of gamers, so you kind of pick and choose that way too. Like, there are some of my friends I wouldn't want to play negotiation or trading games with, so, like, you try and avoid those.
Yeah.
They're having kind of a fun conversation in the chat. So, we mentioned teaching games and some of the trials of that. They're talking about whether or not that affects a game, and because that, to me, it affects the game greatly. And then they're also talking about how they like to teach games. And do you teach rules first and then try and like remind people during the game, or do you just teach them a couple rules and get them playing with the bits and stuff? Do you guys have a preferred method?
Generally speaking, I would try to teach the whole rules first before I delve into a game. Even to tie this back to the topic of replayability, I'd be very worried of ruining one person's game for them having not really fully understood it before they started going down a certain path within the game. And if you give someone a real sour experience with the game, they're never going to want to see that come off the shelf again. So, cross that one off the game group's list.
Yeah. I found that a lot of times it depends on the person themselves if they want to learn it all at first. Some people are just like, let's just start and then explain while we're playing. And I actually prefer to explain the whole set of rules and just make sure we're all on the same playing field. But a lot of people just prefer to learn as they go. So usually I'll start explaining, and if I see them kind of like, getting a little anxious and just like, let's just dive in, then I'll explain it while everyone's picking their turns or something like that.
I struggle so much with that. If someone doesn't like the upfront rules explanation, I start just not even knowing, because I can demo a game. I can go to a con and work for a company and demo, and that's a different experience. You give like the 3-minute version with a couple of the rules and some of the turn order. But for a Euro game where I'm going to be sitting there for 3 hours, I really want you to know all the things.
Right.
I want you to know all of the possible actions and everything that's going to matter. And I want to remind you in 10 minutes about what scores and what makes points, because in general, you're investing 3 hours into it, and you want to be able to get them to play it with you again. I think you kind of brought that up, Matt. Like, the first experience has to sell the second one, and for me, that wouldn't be possible if I didn't have all the rules.
Right.
Also, hi, Zen. Zen's in the chat, and Zen's an amazing game teacher.
Yeah.
As far as the blend of teaching versus playing while teaching, is there any thought to doing a mini version, teaching version of the game? Let's play 2 turns and then, get a feel for it and then reset up. It feels like one of those things that's a luxury of time that you never have. It's going to drag that game out to be several hours now, or maybe it should only be 2.
Right.
But it could work if there's a blend of learning styles at play.
Yeah, I think that's a very effective thing to do with something like Arkwright or Food Chain Magnet. Games that are super punishing if you don't get off the ground quickly. Yeah. Food Chain Magnet, you may or may not know, I don't actually care for it because it's so very punishing that you literally can take people away from any useful action, and they'll just have to sit there and kind of shuffle their cards for a couple hours. So I always think that playing a couple of demo turns of that game can be super useful, and then going back and resetting to 0. So for just in general, when you replay games, are there particular types of games that you like to replay? Are there mechanics or even designers that you feel benefit more from playing multiple times? Matt? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely the Euro strategy type games I feel lend themselves to my personal favor of replayability, because I'm looking at it as that test of skill definition of a game. I want to see myself improve upon my last play. I want to learn from the game and maybe pick up some new strategies and try it out there. So all the usual designers there. I mentioned in my intro that I've been playing a lot of X-Wing miniatures. I fell into that game when it first came out, and regularly attend tournaments in my area. And I think one of the things I really got out of that was the fact that you could take your one little squad of X-Wing ships and play 6 games in a row over the span of one afternoon. And you feel like a learning curve within that day just because you're doing the same game over and over again. That's one of the things I really like about it.
And now that you say that, I could definitely give that same exact reaction to why I like Magic. A lot of people don't play board games and Magic, but I do think that this could be said about minis too, or RPGs, that there are just different playing styles. In Magic, I bring my one deck, and I probably play against 4 or 5 different people, all different decks, all different experiences, and at the end of the day, you really feel like you learned something. Like, you'll see someone play something or do something that you admire or have to note because they did something so clever, because that's what Magic or minis does for you. You're just trying to do something clever. That's that feeling that you're looking for. I think that's a really interesting point, and I hadn't actually thought about that in relation to Magic before. What about you, Nutters?
I tend to play a lot of deck builders a lot, just or back builders like Orleans, because you start both at one spot, the same spot actually, with the same workers, and then you just develop in different pathways. So one person might go towards this path of trying to do the area control thing, and another person might do like the scholar thing and City Hall and such. Or you have Star Realms, which I play a lot of online and both offline. And so, in that kind of game, I replay a lot simply because I try to create like the perfect deck. Like every time I play it, I always try to create the perfect deck, and it has to change according to what the other player's deck is forming to. So I think like with those games, it's just there's so much variability on how the decks are forming or how your bag is forming that it's just something easy to just pick up again and just play it out over and over and over and just learn again.
Yeah.
I could see that.
And to give some love.
Go ahead.
Yeah. To give some love to the other types of games, not just a hardcore heavy Euro. I mean, if you're playing a game that's thematic or story driven, I mean that should fall into the bucket of this is a series of interesting decisions, that kind of game. And if it's a really good game, you're gonna want to, you're gonna want to encounter those decision points over and over again, so you can kind of take the other path and see what happens if I take that other option. See how the experience and theme plays out.
But for me, theme is the first thing to get old. The novelty of theme to me is kind of interesting, but I kick around, and as soon as there's not like mechanisms behind that back it up, I do get a little bit lost. And I don't replay thematic games as often as I probably could or should. Like Legends of Andor didn't really hold up for me beyond 2 plays, because even though the entire game shifted almost play to play, like you don't even know what your objective is when you start and you're telling a story, I just felt like I had almost the exact same experience with 2 drastically different stories. Thematic games are like the first for me to go.
Yeah, it almost feels like thematic games are just trying to still find their footing as far as long-term replayability, and that may be why we're seeing things like legacy games come about, just because they feel like they need to up the ante a little bit and making you want to progress the story or take another shot at those decisions.
Yeah.
I personally like my most replayed games are games that are heavy, so as to need a bit more delving into, like you have to really figure out the game, and also you need a multiple amount of strategies to win, different ways of scoring points or different objectives or something for me, because like Russian Railroads Nutters, spoiler alert, there is a best strategy in it. It's not necessarily that strategy will mean that you win. It's just that if you're the only player that goes for it, you do. So that game, once we figured that out, we kind of left the game alone. But something like Nippon, I still haven't found a best strategy in. And there are just a tons of different things you can do. So every time you play, you kind of line up what you think you might do that game, and you go for it, and then you try and get better at that particular strategy over time. I just like that kind of almost wanting to break the game. Robin does have a question for us, though. He says, how much of a game's replayability is down to the time it takes to play compared to the experience of being able to play many different paths to victory? The actual time on the table for replayability can be an issue as soon as you get above about 3 hours. So I would say I'm gonna take like Twilight Imperium, Dominant Species, and like Democker off the list here, and just ask you about kind of more reasonable games.
Well, let's talk about Mage Knight then.
Star Trek Frontiers on Tuesday. It's not coming till Tuesday.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people with copies of Mage Knight sitting on their shelves. I love the game, and I know a lot of people who love it. And there's always this burning desire to say, why haven't I been playing more Mage Knight? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think I've picked that game up twice since I've got it, and unfortunately I haven't played a full game. Like I played maybe through half a game, and then I'm just running out of time. Like we've been sitting on the table for too long. So that's unfortunate because I hear it's a really good game, and it was progressing in a good way, but it just takes too long for me to just sit on the table for that amount of
Yeah.
time.
Mage Knight is definitely a game that is favored for solo play, and for those of us in content generally, there are a couple channels, of course, but most of us play multiplayer games, and I never ever solo game. If I have solo time, I'm making a video. So it's like, it's hard to justify something like Mage Knight to me.
Okay.
But I would say in general, for our group, the time played doesn't actually affect replayability that much. My my core group of friends, 2 to 3 hours is kind of our that's our game length preference. So those are considered to be the longer games, and so I wouldn't say in my particular case it's an issue at all.
Yeah, as far as the design of the game is concerned, no matter how long it is, it could still benefit from future plays. Along just the game being long in and of itself isn't going to make it something that doesn't you know have a positive experience. Have a learning curve to it. If you take it out of the game design focused, very narrow definition, just look at the facts of life. For a lot of people, of course, yes, it's gonna affect them. I would probably say it would affect me. If the game is, 2+ hours, it's gonna have a less chance of coming out more often. It's just the simple math of how much time I have to play games and how much time people have to be at my table.
Yeah.
I
I think
highly
it's,
recommend just dropping every other type of hobby and just playing games. That'll do
I may
it.
quit my job too.
yeah. Yeah, it's hard to sell too if it's a really long game, especially if you're not meeting with the same consistent group of people. And just when you get a new set of group of people, it's just really hard to sell them like, oh yeah, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna play this 2 hour game, and but first let me show you the rules, which is gonna take me about half an hour, and then we'll get into it. And 3 hours later, they're either having a great time or they're just not, which is unfortunate because they've invested so much time. And and so I think just like with longer games, it's a lot harder to sell just to a new gamer. But yeah, I think with like Mitch and myself, we sit down to both short games and we sit down to long games. Usually on the weekend, that's when we start playing a lot longer games. And on the weekdays when we come home from work, we just play those like quick 15 to an hour game, 15 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, on the topic of time investment, like you're saying, you got to have a group who's all sort of on the same page that we're gonna, pick up some games and then we'll come back to other games and replay them. Because if it's just you pushing for it and you're dead set on getting replayability out of your games, you're gonna arrange a game night that is, pre-planned, and we're gonna come here and we're gonna play Sulkin again. And you'll have it all set up at the table, and you'll have taken all the time to refresh on the rules. And if some people don't come, or people come and talk everyone out of the game, I mean,
We cut out a little
it's
bit there,
gonna
Matt.
put you off because you had this bad experience.
Sorry, you cut off a little bit at the end there. Um,
I was just saying that you gotta have the whole group has to be on the same page about actually wanting to play games over and over again, or else you as the lone person pushing for it, you're gonna have a bad experience where you put a lot of time in getting prepared to replay games, and then you wind up having to pack it back up, or you waste a lot of the time refreshing rules and reading errata and such.
yeah, I will say I have kind of a self-motivation at this point to less of the time have zero idea of any rules before I get to a table. Learning out of a book is something that does, unfortunately, in my group happen a little bit more than it should, where you're just like literally reading the book and then maybe explaining it or reading the book aloud in parts, and that can be so miserable as to never let that game touch a table again. It happens a little too often for my comfort. You get caught up in work that day or something and you didn't get to read the rule book beforehand, but
Yeah, we all know we shouldn't do it, and then it happens. But that's interesting to see how a group could react to it. Because we talked about first impressions before. If people have a bad play because of the rules, they're never going to want to play a game again. But I mean, shouldn't it be the other way around? Like, shouldn't we want to play a game a second, the third, or fourth time just because? What are the odds that we even get all the rules right on the first play? Like,
Right.
it happens
Especially as the
every time.
complication goes up, the more problems and rules errors you're probably going to have, and they can be
Hmm.
significant.
Yeah. No, the first time that we usually play it, both Mitch and myself, it's just we're learning the game, we're learning it, so it doesn't necessarily matter, who wins or not. It's just like, can we get through this game and learn it to the point where we don't have to look in the rule book again? And then that second play is a lot more enjoyable than the first.
So Robin asks, Robin is full of awesome questions this morning, thank you. Is there a game that your group loves to replay, but which makes you groan every time they bring it to the table? That's kind of a negative one. I didn't read it all the way through. But do you have games that your group will play over and over and over again and that you have to kind of grin and bear it a little bit?
I know when I go to like specific game nights or certain game nights where they'll start to pick up like Werewolf or One Night Ultimate Werewolf at the end of the night, and that's usually when I exit. It's like, okay, I think I gotta go. There's no fault of theirs. I just personally don't enjoy those games.
Yeah, I'm sort of, I don't mind them, I don't love them, but I can have a similar experience where the one game group I was in a lot, starts at 7:30 at night, and most people are getting out of there around 10:30. So it's like, how much time do we have to really get a major game to the table? And inevitably, for a span of like 2 years, they would always reach for the resistance
Oh no.
before even talking about like, what are we actually going to play tonight? How are we breaking up into groups here? And it would be 45 minutes of resistance before we could even really get the day moving. And it's the same people. I mean, it's the same people, all very established gamers. So it's not the type of group where you need to do a lot of warm-up games and get everyone in the mood to play a big Euro. We could have just hit the ground running if we wanted to. So the resistance gave me that groan very often.
I think I'm actually on the guilty side of this because I'm generally the person that brings the games. So I have to try and recognize when my group is sick of whatever the end of the game night or the end of the night game is. Because I usually have one or two in my purse, and for a while it was like archaeology and like the first one I can think of was Shadow Hunters, and we had to really gauge when people got sick of it and just like filter them out into the next one because, as I said at the very beginning, I get sick of the lighter games faster than heavy games. So you have to just wait until there's that turning point where people are getting like not having fun with it anymore. Skull and Roses was another one that was a little hard to tell when people were sick of it. It became like a couple people were not happy with it, so we had to switch that to the next thing. But you're always going to need those fillers or those end of the night games. So it's hard because there's only so few of those that I like.
Right.
I'm totally the guilty party. And the other thing I figured I'd mention in this because I always find it to be an interesting metric that people try and use. Do you find that things like asymmetrical player powers, modular boards, scenarios, those types of things lend to replayability in a game?
Mm,
Yeah, I'd
Like
say
things that
so.
reviewers call replayable.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just more game that you literally have not seen yet. So it almost, I mean, I don't want to call it cheating. I feel like it's cheating, but in the sense that what I think of when you ask me why I want to replay a game goes back to that, improving the skill and improving the strategy. But you're scratching that cult of the new itch just by playing a brand new character. You get to play the same game, 8 times because you do a different faction 8 times. Well, you're practically playing a brand new game at that point. So yes and no. I think it's a good crutch to lean on if a game could benefit from it style wise.
Yeah. I think like the first game that came to my mind that I played recently was Stronghold Second Edition, and it's asymmetrical where like the humans are pretty much guarding the wall, and then the goblins and every monster troll and such is trying to go ahead and break through the wall. So it's a two-player game only, but last time I played it, I was successful as a human, and then Mitch was trying to figure out his way of how to break through the wall. But while he was playing that side, I was kind of trying to figure it out for him too. Like, what would I do if I was in his situation? And so I think it kind of lended itself to like, oh, okay, like I really want to play this game again, but now I have the option to play it as the other opponent, as the other player, and then it lends itself to an absolutely new and different game. So it could be more replayable because of that.
Yeah, asymmetric design feels like this big, high risk, high reward play where it makes me nervous because those games are probably the hardest to design. So I get this feeling like, oh no, it's gonna just be a bad game. It's just another attempt at someone trying to make asymmetric gameplay work, and I'm just not gonna like the game.
Well, and
But
to be
when
fair,
it does work, it's fantastic. Like look at
90
You
times
mentioned Terra Mystica before.
Well, 90 times out of 100, an asymmetrical game like Stronghold is going to be a fail. Like, it's very hard to make a strategic versus tactical game work that well. All right, now you mentioned the big dog, because I was going to leave Terra Mystica to its own kind of section in this video. So first off, have y'all both played it, and about how many times? I'm just
I've
curious.
never played it.
Oh my god.
I know.
I've only played it twice.
Oh my god, really?
I wish. Hey, I have a not being able to replay games problem. That's why I'm here. This is my first meeting. I'm in this first stage, and I want to play more Terra Mystica.
So
Please
the
help
more I
me.
talk to people, the more I'm realizing that I'm on the more unique side. I've played Terra Mystica probably 20 to 30 times. It's a problem. I got an issue. This should be my meeting about Terra Mystica. I won't play it anymore, but so generally, Netters, you need to bring that up to your Euro group and play it next week, or Joe or Eric, someone like play some Terra Mystica with Netters. So the game came out with 14 races in the box, and the expansion added something like 6 or 8. I can't remember. So at this point, you can play Terra Mystica as umpteen million different races. The game itself is pretty static for how it sets up, and there's always going to be somewhat of a best way to play. You want to make new cities, and you want to do okay or well on the cult tracks, and you want to use your power efficiently, and you want people to build by you, and you want to build by people. But the way to get there for every single race is super different. And that game, more than any, is my absolute favorite game to replay, more than Kanban, more than anything else. It just holds up so well.
Do you find yourself playing like a different race every single time you play, or do you lend yourself towards like a specific race? Like, this is mine.
I would say I don't often back-to-back play the same race. And what I will say for Eric, who's scared of Terra Mystica, don't be scared. The beginner scenarios they have in the book, like they give you a suggestion for which races to use first. They give you kind of the easier to drive races, the ones that have super strong powers and kind of a no duh, that's kind of what I want to do strategy. Like, it's very straightforward stuff. You want to, like, if you are the nomads, you get to put down free stuff, and it's really nice, so you're going to expand really quickly. Zen, oh my god, I can't even with all this, like, no one's playing Terra Mystica. But me personally, you start seeing some of the races that play well to your personal style, and you'll pick those ones out. The expansion makes it where you have fewer choices because you pull a number of them out of a bag and then I'll bid points on them. But the expansion, I don't like any of the races in the expansion at all. I hate them all. But the passing rules and the auction and the new board are well worth the dollars. But the races are all unbalanced and awful.
There's no. I think I know the answer, but there's no Terra Mystica app or any sort of online play for this, correct?
Is this weird? Oh God, what's the name? If Ori's still in the chat, he probably knows. But
those weird websites like Vassal.
Snellman. It was like Snellman something, but it's really ugly, and I wouldn't recommend it for anyone.
Okay, yeah, that same story written over and over again. There's a lot of really ugly online board game play sites, but it feels like the more complicated games, they could actually really benefit from that, because that's when I first realized that, how beneficial replaying the same game could be when you start to get into online play, through an iOS or Android app of a board game, and you play it 20 times there when you would never have gotten it to the table before. And all of a sudden, you feel like a pro. next time it actually does come to the table.
So Ori doesn't remember what the website was, but it's impossible to learn on. Do not try it. I can't recommend it. If you want, like over the internet, I will teach Terra Mystica to anyone at any time. But for Zen, who's in the chat, I will teach at BGGCon if you want. Once you get to know the game, it's only 90 to 2 hours, maybe. Like, I've played a game of Terra Mystica in an hour on a pinch.
Well, what about like Zen and myself and you? Like we can all have like.
You're BGGConing too?
Yeah.
I forgot. Oh man, yeah, let's do that.
So we'll get a whole game on. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
we
probably
did Gallery
before then.
I
So
hope
sticking to theme, you should play it on the first day and the last day of the con.
Yeah.
If you
Get
could
that
nail me down for that
second play
long.
in.
It would be nice though. You would be able to see like 2 different races and probably see 2 vastly different strategies. That's a really good idea. Beth would like to play BGGCon too. I have up to 5 seats in this game, people.
You may need to officially schedule it.
I will. I'll do it. BGGCon for me, it's a whirlwind. I run into everyone and I say, yeah, I'd love to play a game, and then I never see them again. So like maybe 3 or 4 things I'll actually schedule and do. Speaking of, Matt, are you going to BGGCon?
I have a hotel and I have a ticket.
Yeah.
And probably, you know,
What?
I will not say I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to a con until like the week before, because I don't want to have to back out and, you know, make a big deal out of it. But yeah, I have every intention of getting there.
I would say as soon as you have a plane ticket, that's like when you can tell people.
Yeah, the plane
apparently.
ticket should confirm it.
Which I don't buy plane tickets this early on, so I won't technically have one, but it's my yearly vacation, so I'm totally going.
Yeah, about 6 to 8 weeks out, we'll decide. I've been in this swing where I've been taking return trips to Texas. Me and Texas have this strange board game related love affair somehow. Because one of the other things that I didn't mention in the intro is I'm one of the tabletop department managers for PAX. And I've been doing that for PAX East for many years now. And when PAX South started in San Antonio, they had asked me to come down there and assist. So I went to the first 2, and I really like it down there. And I want to go again, probably a 3rd time. But that's only maybe 2 months after BGGCon. So I was able to swing it last year, where I, you know, went to Texas 2 times in the span of 2.5 months. But you never quite know. So somewhere around, you know, 6 to 8 weeks before BGGCon, I'll have to make a hard decision of, can I do both? And if I can't, which one am I going to do?
That's a rough one. I literally,
Yeah.
like, it's the worst time in the world for me to take a vacation because I work in retail and it's during the winter. But my sister also lives in Carrollton, Texas, so there's, like, 2 amazing reasons for me to be there in November, or October, November, whenever BGGCon is.
There you go. I mean, it's a fantastic con. It's
God,
one
yeah.
you don't want to miss.
Yeah, I'm totally looking forward to it.
Oh man, people in the chat are mentioning that they have slower play groups with like downtime and a little more analysis paralysis. I can't even imagine a game of Rebellion for 14 hours. I don't know that I would have been able to get through that. We have some downtime issues in my group from time to time, but never that bad.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah, usually like with downtime, I usually have something else I'm occupying myself with. I try to like get my crocheting on or something, or just post pictures.
I definitely try not to be on my phone too much. I check Twitter and stuff if I've already picked out what I'm going to do on my turn, or if the type of game it is, it just means I don't need to pay attention till the next person, like the person right before me. But I know it's rude, but it's just kind of my reality to be online all the time.
Yeah.
My friends deal with it.
Yeah, I think people accept that more and more as time goes on. But that's such a hard question to pose. It's like, you know, how do you solve downtime? You know, that's a whole nother show, I guess.
Yes.
Well, and it can ruin amazing games. Grand Austria Hotel is like a really good example of a game that got completely boned because downtime makes that game miserable. but the actual like the mechanisms behind that game are really fun and cool.
Yeah, and that's one of those ones again where I'd say only play with two. I mean, if you can play with two people who are fast, that game just zips back and forth, then it's a whole different game.
I loved it at 3 the most, but downtime, like, it depended on the personalities. And at 2, we added an extra die, and we gave fate encounters to all the dudes at the tables. So at 2 players, they just didn't seem to clear out fast enough. So if they stayed out for 2 turns, they would get dismissed.
Gotcha.
And the extra die was because we felt at 2, you never got, like, in 3 or 4 players, every once in a while, you get those really amazing turns where you get, like, 5 or 6 dice on one number. And at 2, because there's only 10 dice, you really never got that. It was just a really fun aspect that you missed in the two-player experience. So I think we went up to, I think it was 11 dice from 10, or it was 1 up from whatever it recommended.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'll probably have to do that next time I play it. Yeah, because I felt limited with the amount of dice that were being played in the two-player game.
But the speed of the game was much more fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've only played it with 2, I think with 3 too, and it wasn't so bad with AP. It was really easy to get through the rule book, but once we started playing, I didn't have too much of an issue with AP.
I've played twice at 4 players, and I wanted to jump off the building both times. And they were not slow players.
I think this actually really ties well back into the app statement that I was making before about playing on a phone or a tablet, where, you know, it's sort of that, you know, you don't have to be the bad person because it's the app that has a turn timer. It's not me nudging you across the table saying, you've only got 60 seconds. Take your damn turn.
Yeah.
And that, and going back to the question of does time affect replayability, the fact that you can, you know, break through a whole session of a game on an app in 10 minutes when it might take 45 at the table, it helps. It helps in building up some of those initial replays so that when you do get to the table, it's more satisfying because it feels like, oh, this is the 8th time I've got to play this game, and we're all seasoned players for this specific title.
Yeah, I personally have yet to find an app for heavier games that I like. I at this point only really like Star Realms and Patchwork. I really like light, simple games that I can play with Twitter friends, but I haven't liked Waterdeep, Le Havre, really anything I've tried that's heavier. I wish I could, but it's not the same.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of table talk that you want in that heavier game, especially in a worker placement. There's a bit of, you know, trying to manipulate the conversation, you know, that looming threat of who's actually in the lead.
Yes.
You know,
positioning and like politics and like all the fun parts of it, and smack talk even is harder to do online, whereas in Star Realms you're like, you can screenshot that 80 damage you happen to get and you're like, look at that, and that's hilarious to me.
I think Waterdeep was the only one that I did have a good fulfilling experience with, just because we kept like, you know, a group text thread going on with the players, so there was, you know, enormous amounts of smack talk being levied amongst the players there. But I can relate to preferring the smaller games. I think I've had really positive experiences with Carcassonne, of course, having been out there a long time, Nourishing Hex, and I went through a period where when I had a newborn daughter at the time, and I would rock her to sleep every night for like a period of like 18 months, and every night I would put her in one arm like this, and then turn her head, and then I would have my phone here on the, like my other arm here, and my phone will be on the armrest of the rocking chair, and she would have a little bottle, and I'd have the bottle here, and she would be closing her eyes, and the lights would be out, and it would be Ascension. I'd play 2 Ascension games, because you could get an opponent like that, like 5 seconds. There'd be someone immediately matched up in a game with you. Game took like 5-10 minutes. And it's like I played hundreds of Ascension games, putting a child to sleep, and then I was like, completely burnt. I went through Storm of Souls and I was like, nope, never playing Ascension again. But it was a good run.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I really wanted to like Hearthstone because I thought it was going to be that, but with strategy. I thought it was going to be my first kind of like heavy strategy game. I unfortunately don't like Hearthstone at all. I wish I did. I just think it's like bad magic.
It's a time killer. It's very random. I mean, it's good at what it's set out to be, but Like
Yeah,
I still come back to it. I go back and forth whether I have it installed on my phone or not.
I do the same thing with that and Soulforge and Hex and like anything really. I'll download a game just to play it with someone specific, like every
Hmm.
once in a while. I have recently though had some luck in replaying games through like Yucata or Board Game Arena, which I don't usually like asymmetrically, but I or like asynchronously. I do like it if I'm over Skype with a friend. Nicholas Coe and I played Finca the other day, and I actually had a really good time, and that's more of an involved game than something like a patchwork. So, do you guys play anything online, like Yucata or Board Game Arena or any of those ones to try and get replays in?
Oh yeah, I play Yukata. I play that one, and then I also play Board Game Arena occasionally too. But it just I don't know. It's nice when I have the other player playing at the same time that I'm online, and when we're both like just making the game go. I found like one game will probably take me like a month or 2 months to play through, and it's kind of like, oh, what was I doing? I'll try to write myself little notes, to kind of help myself remember what my plan of action was for my next turn. But it's just hard to play those games like in a long span of time. So
That's where they
Yeah,
went
there's,
wrong for me too.
yeah,
I always feel this weird social awkwardness of, as far as like how much time should you take between a turn, because at some points I'll be ready to just fire back turns, immediately every 2 minutes, and
yeah,
then you start to think like, am I bothering this person? Are they wanting to just take one turn and then like go to sleep? I'm
yeah,
keeping them up because it keeps buzzing.
yeah.
So
It's a lot easier.
that's where being at the table and like actually having the board game conversation it's a more satisfying experience. So that's where you want to get your replays in. But you know, as we spoke to the troubles and the realities of can you actually get replays, you're gonna lean on an app here and there.
I'm
Yeah,
actually considering doing hangouts like this, but maybe trying to like maybe stream online plays because I've had a lot of luck with Skype conversations while I'm playing a
Hmm.
board game with someone. So I haven't figured out if it's contentable, but it's actually really fun. I've had a lot of like because it adds in that social aspect, and then you just play the game in whatever the game time is, like 90 minutes or so, and you've played the entire thing, and you don't have to wait for me to take my turn after 2 weeks. I apologize to everyone that's ever played a game with me
That's
asynchronously.
actually a really, really good idea. I mean, could we be holding this conversation about replayability and have a little window of us playing a three-player game of Carcassonne
Right? Like I
at
don't
the same time?
right. I
I
just
think
need to
it could
like
work.
figure out how to do that, but Nicholas is
Yeah,
working
but
on it for me.
you need to get some sort of XSplit or open broadcaster software or something like that going. I don't know. I don't do a whole lot of streaming, but
I
I'm
have
sure
it.
those
I
have
have
the
it. My rig is
capability to
not.
do it.
Yeah, my rig is not quite built for streaming. I'm working on
Yeah.
upgrades, but
I think Daniel Solis he does a Carcassonne online, where he'll meet up with someone and kind of drink coffee and play a game of Carcassonne, and they'll
Yeah,
both be online and kind of converse like throughout the gameplay.
you could interview someone while playing a medium weight euro.
Yeah.
I could. And what's nice is with that specifically, you tend to play games online that you've played in cardboard because trying to learn a game online is really unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Which Matt, were you in my game of Black Friday?
And no, I don't think so.
Okay, it was a different Matt. No, it was Minneapolis Matt. It was. But so the first time I
Not a
ever played
problem.
Black Friday was online, and it was kind of miserable for me because I thought I kind of understood what was going on, but I didn't really. And as soon as I got the cardboard version of the game and played it once on the table, it all kind of came alive for me. It it made such a big difference. So when I play online games, I tend to only play stuff that I know really well. And I think that lends to this whole replayability thing. Is like I could play Russian Railroads or really whatever, and I don't mind that I've played it a lot in cardboard because it's just nice to be able to see what's going on when you're learning this really unintuitive online version of something.
Yeah. I learned how to play Glenmore online, and I think that's what sold me on actually purchasing the game. It's kind of like it was the first time that I actually was up for learning a game online because usually I don't like doing that unless I watch like a ton of videos or read the rule book beforehand and such. But I actually enjoyed it a lot. It was the first playthrough was just learning the game, and then the second one I was like, oh, okay, now I could be doing this and this. And I still haven't mastered the game, so I still need to play it a lot more.
What's
Glenmore
everyone's
is
thoughts on like adding components or references and stuff to your games, and does that potentially make your group more open to breaking out a game off the shelf again if they know you've printed like handy dandy mini rules reference and it's going to speed the learning process along, stuff like that? Do you all do that?
I do that for confusing imports, like Colony the first time we played that one. I don't know how many of y'all have seen that when you ordered it, but the rulebook was a hot mess, and it made no sense, and your turn order didn't even make sense from the rulebook, and the player aids that had been built, I cannot remember who did them, but somebody amazing online did some player aids for it, and that made the game much more playable. Any rulebook on the back that doesn't have the turn order, in general, I try and print one out if I can, but I'm not real good about this. People that have played with me know that, but for games that are not well known in the U.S., I try. That's kind of my line, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's one of those situations where you're not sure if it's worth the time and effort. Like, are we actually going to get the game back out again? Should I spend 30 minutes printing and laminating?
yeah.
Is it all going to be
No,
for nothing?
I've done it for only a few games. I think those games are just, I've done it because they're in a different language, so I had to do it. But otherwise, I don't do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've had
well, I
that
mean,
same
there's a
thoughts when
difference
it came
between
to
not having, like, the...
organizers.
Yeah. Oh, organizers... So I don't sleeve games, but I so far own, like, 2 organizers.
They're so beautiful, and I want to buy a bunch of them, but they're a lot of money, and I'm never sure if how long the game is going to be on my shelf and how often am I actually going to play it. It's one of these things like I think we're prepped. We have all these awesome accessories and things out there to buy. Uh, you know, Gamers must come together and play the same games over and over again. Then the money will flow.
Yeah, I make my own foam inserts,
Oh,
and then
nice.
also I organize my games. Like I put baggies in my games if I don't have an organizer, a foam core. But I'll label each single bag and like what's supposed to go inside of it, so that every time like I just hand out all the bags to everyone, and everyone could just put whatever needs to be in there. And it does take some time, but in the end, it's like easy to pack up and easy to like lay out too.
I really enjoy organizing games, but if I do those types of, like, if I put those types of uh, regimented organizing skills together, at this moment, I have a stack of about 10 unorganized, unopened games because I want to, like, organize them very specifically, all nicely done. And if I had just been okay with just putting things in baggies, I probably would have had them all cracked and open and ready to go.
Yeah, I think it all sort of comes together here to say that the desire to play games over again is not really the problem, and solving all these little things like improving your ability to teach and having the game, having a reference and having it bagged up for starting players, like smoothing the experience as much as possible. Just the fact that it makes games easier to get to the table by result is going to help you get more games to the table, and as a continuing result, those games will start reappearing.
Right. Yeah, that's it's really helpful when it's all organized and just you can get it out and just play it instantly. And yeah, I think that's like a lot of helpful hints just to try to get these games out. And I think, I mean, if you really like a game and if you really want to play it more, you should probably put in a little bit more time just to organize it better and just kind of to learn the rules, how to present it easier for other people to learn. And it'll probably hit the table a lot more.
Yeah, I think in general though, if you have a group that are friends, like my game group are friends of mine, like I consider them friends outside of just gaming, which may or may not be true, who knows? But I would say, like, if I'm super jazzed about something, they'll try it, like, even if they didn't want to. So even if I really want to replay something, if I'm insistent, because we play that stupid game before every game night of, hey, what do you want to play? What do you want to play? So if I'm just like, hey, let's play Kanban, generally speaking, people are like, okay, set it up. There are very few exceptions to that, and that's only if they maybe didn't care for the game the first time or got sick of it or something.
Mhm.
But if you're insistent on anything, I have found that people are more than willing to accommodate it. I'm trying to... Sorry, they're going through a no bags philosophy.
Interesting.
For Ludwig, Bezier doesn't do inserts. They do like the white, like one cardboard thing to like not get their cards messed up. I don't know how they did no inserts on Ludwig. That game is bananas.
Do you ever
Speaking
worry
of,
about
actually,
hurting
real
the
quick,
game's feelings if you don't play them enough?
I do on some
Come
games,
into
yeah.
quietly at night and tell them that you still love them?
I look at my Feld shelf a lot, and Strasbourg just stares back at me because no one in my group really loved it, and I love that game. It just is there now. Out of print. Never gonna get printed again. No one wants to play it with me. Someone come play Strasbourg with me.
Yeah, on the 10 by 10 challenge that I have these stickers on them too. I don't know if you can see that, but I have this sticker like right here, and it tells me like how many times I've played it this year. And I also log it on BGG, but it kind of promotes, like, oh, that game hasn't been played. Like let's play this one, and kind of keep me on track too.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing that like post-it thing where you put a post-it on all your games. And it's supposed to be a visual help for you to know which ones you haven't played that year because you remove a post-it every time you would play a game in your collection. Brian asked me if I wanted to do that because the purpose was anything with a post-it at the end of the year you would get rid of, and I was like, nope, not going to do it. Because like 3 times a year I sell off any games I don't want. So
Yeah, if you don't have a problem with games, then you don't need to go that extreme of forcing yourself to get rid of stuff. If you're good about it already, then you've already overcome it. I never actually even considered this whole idea, the 10 by 10 putting the stickers on. I really like that because if other people in your groups, like, I don't know generally where you play and how you pick out your games, but at least for my circumstance, it usually leads to like 2 or 3 people when we're at my house, like coming into my office and looking at the games and having a conversation about the shelf. If they knew what the stickers meant and like everyone's pretty cool with each other, they'd probably say like, hey, let's try to get one of the sticker games out to get another check mark on it. It's
Yeah,
another little carrot.
usually that helps like kind of guide people towards playing those
Hmm.
games, and that's how I get them on the table a lot more. Just because they ask, what are those cute little stickers on there? What are they for? And it kind of promotes the question, and like, oh, well, let's try it out.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
How about we take it down off the shelf so I can show
Yeah.
you?
And I
now we
also,
get back in the content thing though, because everyone's gonna want to play the new things with you, so you can get a review out. Sorry, I
yeah.
saw Keyflower in your hands. What were you gonna say?
Oh, yeah, that's another thing too. I also put these cute little stickers. I don't see if you can see that, but it says "Play Me" on it, and I have a whole top shelf of Play Me games, and it just kind of like that's another way I could promote like, oh well, these games haven't been played, maybe we should play those. So I do it for just like the 10 by 10 challenge stickers and the new games. And that's kind of like attracts attention. It's kind of like a little light bulb in the moths kind of coming along.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to the point of playing these stickers. I usually get the questions of why is that one still in shrink wrap? And that's a whole different conversation. Getting the first play, let alone the second or the third. So those are more often to come out because people want to be like, can I open it? Like, yes, please.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
I'm way too impatient for that to ever happen. I just
I,
automatically open everything.
I even had 2 games to unbox in case I didn't get guests with my Hangouts. So I was like, well, if I'm just gonna vlog, I'll sit here and I'll unbox Bear Valley and
Oh,
and the new Raw because I
Very
needed
nice.
it. But these are games that I have played before, so I'm actually having them in my collection doesn't mean that they're unplayed. I've played them before. It's great.
how was Bear Valley?
It is lighter than Red 7, so it's on the Chittick party game side.
Hmm.
I want to play it at 6. I played it at 4, and it's very like, I don't know if you guys have played Archipelago, but you put like, you have this track out and you're trying to get from one side to the other, and every turn you kind of point to an empty space and you say, I'm going to put a card there, and then you reveal the card and you make some decisions, and it's like a mix between that tile mechanic from Archipelago and Cartagena, which was an old racing game. It was interesting. It's going to be one of those end-of-the-night games that probably doesn't live past 4 or 5 plays before I decide whether or not to keep it or trade it. Like, Impulse is still in my collection, even though it'll never get played again. I just have a Chittick thing.
It's not a bad thing to have.
But on that note, I'd like you guys to take a couple minutes just to let people know where they can find you online, and then we'll probably wrap it up here. Matt, you said daily worker placement?
Yep.
With my friend Nicole Sean?
Yeah, doing some contributor writing for them. Other than that, you can find me on Twitter at Matt Morgan. The letters MDP, which stand for a very old website that I no longer write for. I don't think anyone writes for. But Matt Morgan MDP, that's where you'll find me mostly, just tweeting and then occasionally writing or producing a YouTube video or two that I'll just tweet out.
All right. And Netters, where can we find you? I know a million different places.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same screen name at Netters Plays, and I'm found on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, along with Meeples included, too. So I'm all over the place.
Oh, Meeples included, you say. So
Yeah.
we all made a new collaborative website. It's called Meeples Included. We are at meeplesincluded.com. It is also on Facebook and Twitter at Meeples Included, and Instagram, which is kind of Netter's playground, but I try and help as much as I can. And then I am MaggieBot. If you found me some weird way and you ran into this hangout, hello, nice to meet you, but I'm guessing most of you know who I am. It was nice to see you all, and thank you for keeping our chat alive. This was really fun. Thank you both for coming and hanging out with me.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
For inviting us.
Yeah, Matt, have fun at your yard sale.
Get back to it.
All right. Thank you, and goodbye, everybody.
All right, bye.
Bye.